Mom screamed at me to get out and never come back, so I left. Weeks later, Dad called asking why I'd stopped paying the mortgage. My response left them completely speechless. I never thought a Sunday family dinner could turn your whole world upside down, leaving you absolutely shattered and homeless. But that's exactly what happened when my mother, Gloria, finally screamed for me to get out and never come back. What she didn't know was that for 3 years, I'd been secretly paying her mortgage. Growing up in the Hamilton house was like living on a tightrope, constantly teetering on the edge of my mother's next explosive mood. From my earliest memories, her expectations were impossibly high, a moving target designed to make me feel like I always fell short. My dad, Richard, was the classic peacemaker. He'd slip into my room after one of Mom's storms, assuring me everything would be okay, but he never actually stood up to her. He just smoothed things over until the next inevitable explosion. My older brother, Justin, was 36, and my sister, Elizabeth, 34. They both escaped to college at 18 and rarely looked back. As the youngest at 32, I bore the full, suffocating weight of my mother's evolving disappointments. Every report card, every achievement was scrutinized. 5 A's and 1 B? She'd laser focus on that single B. What happened here? Elizabeth never got anything lower than an A-. It was relentless, soul-crushing. My friends were never good enough. My clothes always made me look heavier. The worst battles were about my future. When I expressed an interest in finance in high school, she scoffed, "Women don't get taken seriously in that field. You should choose something practical, like nursing." But numbers, data, the way they told stories, it fascinated me. So, I secretly applied to business programs. I ended up graduating with honors from Cornell. Still not Harvard, of course, so not quite good enough for Mom. Despite that, I landed a job at a prestigious financial management firm right out of college, quickly working my way up to senior financial advisor. My clients trusted me, my boss valued me. But at family gatherings, Mom would introduce me with a dismissive wave. "This is Heidi. She works with money," as if my entire career was just a cute little hobby. 3 years ago, everything shifted. My dad was laid off at 59 during a company restructuring. His severance package was generous, but not infinite, and he struggled to find comparable work. My mother, however, refused to downsize their lifestyle or even consider getting a job herself. At my age, who would hire me? "And we cannot leave this house. What would people think?" she'd declare. I found out about their financial troubles purely by accident. I was visiting one night and found Dad at the kitchen table, head in his hands, surrounded by bills. He broke down, admitting they were 3 months behind on the mortgage, facing foreclosure. My heart shattered. The next day, without telling anyone, I called their mortgage company. I set up automatic payments from my personal account for their $2,200 monthly mortgage. It was a huge chunk of my income, but I had savings, lived modestly, and the thought of them losing their home was just unbearable. I told no one. Dad eventually found part-time work and claimed it covered their expenses. I pretended to believe him. Looking back, I should have seen the other signs: Mom's new credit cards, Dad's evasiveness, the increasing tension between them. Their 5-bedroom colonial, with its manicured lawn and designer furniture, was my mother's pride and joy, her perceived accomplishment. Despite the constant discomfort, the house held a lifetime of memories: height marks on the kitchen door, the dent in the living room wall from Justin's rogue baseball, my old window seat where I'd escape into books. It was harder to let go of than I ever expected. I still visited at least twice a month, primarily for Dad. After losing his job, his confidence had crumbled, and I worried about his mental health. The liquor bottles in their cabinet seemed to empty faster and faster. Mom's criticism grew sharper, less disguised. I'd bring homemade lasagna, her favorite, and she'd take one bite, asking if I'd used low-fat cheese because she could taste the difference, and not in a good way. If I offered to clean, she'd follow behind me, rewashing dishes, sighing loudly to make sure I noticed. Dad would just retreat, staring at his plate, or suddenly remembering something in the garage. The once confident man now flinched when Mom's voice rose. He started keeping a flask in his pocket. I tried everything to rebuild a connection with my mother, thoughtful gifts, expensive lunches, even a $600 spa day for her birthday. The massage was too hard. My back is going to be bruised tomorrow. And that facial just made my rosacea worse. I don't know why I let you talk me into these things. Nothing worked. Every gesture was met with criticism or suspicion. Why are you being so nice all of a sudden? What do you want? She'd once asked. My best friend, Sophia, saw through my forced cheer. One night, over wine, I finally broke down, telling her everything, including the secret mortgage payments. Heidi, honey, this is not normal or healthy, Sophia said, refilling my glass. You are 32, successful, brilliant, beautiful. And you are being emotionally abused by your mother while bankrolling their lifestyle. They're my parents, I protested weakly. What am I supposed to do? Let them lose their house. Maybe they should lose the house, Sophia countered. Maybe they need a reality check. Your mom refuses to work. They won't downsize. And meanwhile, you're sacrificing your own financial future. Where are your boundaries? I had no answer. In our family, boundaries were selfish, especially when set against parents. Mom firmly believed in honor thy father and mother, selectively interpreting it as do whatever we say without question. Culturally, adult children were expected to care for aging parents. The fact that my parents were only in their early 60s and perfectly capable of supporting themselves with adjustments seemed irrelevant against the weight of these expectations. So, I continued the visits, the payments, the emotional gymnastics. I started having panic attacks the night before seeing them, my chest tightening until I could barely breathe. My therapist suggested reducing contact, but the guilt was overwhelming. What kind of daughter would I be? What I didn't fully recognize then was how my mother's resentment toward me had been growing alongside my success. Each promotion, each client commendation, each financial milestone seemed to deepen her bitterness. She'd given up a promising career in real estate to raise children, a fact she reminded us of frequently. Seeing me thrive, unmarried and child-free by choice, contradicted everything she'd been taught about a woman's worth. When are you going to settle down? Careers are nice, but family is what matters in the end. The irony that she seemed to actively dislike her own family was lost on her. The final warning came 2 weeks before everything fell apart. I'd stopped by unannounced one Tuesday evening, bringing dinner from their favorite Italian restaurant. I let myself in with my old key and heard Mom's voice from the kitchen. She thinks she's so special with her fancy job and her fancy apartment. Little Miss Perfect, always showing off. Does she think we don't see right through her? She was saying, presumably to Dad. I froze in the hallway, the paper bag of food growing heavy. Gloria, please. Dad's voice sounded tired. She's just trying to help. We don't need her help. Mom snapped. We were fine before she started interfering. I raised her better than this, to be so condescending. I backed away silently, leaving without them ever knowing I'd been there. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking. That night, I called Sophia and cried until my throat was raw. Next time will be different, I promised myself, as I had countless times before. Next time I'll stand up for myself. But old habits die hard, and the fear of confrontation had been conditioned into me since childhood. I didn't know then that next time would be the breaking point for all of us. Dad's 60th birthday fell on a Saturday in April. Despite my anxiety, I went home for the weekend. I brought an overnight bag and a carefully wrapped Rolex, the exact model he'd admired years ago. With his job loss, that retirement Rolex had become an impossible dream, and I wanted to give him something special. The tension was palpable from the moment I arrived. Mom greeted me with a stiff hug and immediately commented on my hair. Oh, you cut it again. It was finally getting to a nice length. I'd actually grown it out for months. I'd arranged dinner reservations at an upscale steakhouse, but Mom vetoed it. I already made his favorite pot roast. No need to waste money at those overpriced restaurants. So, we ate at home, at the formal dining table set with the good china. The conversation was stilted, eventually circling back to some complaint or criticism. Dad drank 4 glasses of wine and grew quieter with each one. When it came time for presents, I nervously handed him the blue gift box. His expression when he saw the watch was everything I'd hoped for: surprise, delight, disbelief. Heidi, this is. I cannot accept this. It's too much, he stammered, even as he removed it from the box. Of course you can, I insisted. You deserve it, Dad. Happy birthday. Mom's face went rigid. How much did that cost? She asked sharply. Gloria, Dad warned, but she ignored him. Must be nice to have so much disposable income, she continued, her voice laced with venom. Meanwhile, we are counting pennies for groceries. The evening deteriorated from there. Dad tried to smooth things over, but the damage was done. I went to bed early, texting Sophia. Remind me why I do this to myself. Her response was immediate: because you're a good person who loves her dad. Hang in there. Call if you need me. The next morning, Sunday, I woke early and went downstairs to make coffee. The house was quiet. As I waited for the coffee, I heard their voices from the study. The door was partially open. We cannot keep doing this, Gloria, Dad was saying. The credit cards are maxed out. The property taxes are due next month. We have to tell her. Tell her what? Mom snapped. That we're failing? That's exactly what she wants to hear, so she can swoop in and play savior. That's not fair. She would help us if she knew. I am not taking charity for my child. We'll figure it out. How? I'm working part-time at a hardware store, making a fraction of my old salary. You refuse to get even a part-time job. We are underwater, Gloria. Their voices dropped. My heart pounded. They were in worse shape than I thought, and Dad had been hiding it from me despite my help with the mortgage. When they came into the kitchen 20 minutes later, I had made a decision. I would offer to help them create a financial plan, something sustainable. It was literally my job to help people in financial crisis. Mom, Dad, I began, after we were all seated with coffee. I couldn't help overhearing some of your conversation earlier. I know things have been tight since Dad lost his job, and I want to help. Mom's face went white, then red. You were eavesdropping on us? No, I was in the kitchen. Your voice is carried. I took a deep breath. Look, financial planning is what I do professionally. Let me help you create a budget. Maybe look at refinancing options for the house. So now we need your professional help? Mom's voice had that dangerous edge I recognized from childhood. You think we're incompetent? That we can't manage our own affairs? That is not what I said at all. I struggled to keep my voice calm. But it sounds like things are serious, and I have resources and knowledge that could help. Of course you do, she sneered. Little Miss Perfect with all the answers. You have no idea what the real world is like. You've had everything handed to you. The unfairness of that statement stunned me. I'd worked through college, graduated with loans I'd paid off through years of careful budgeting. Nothing had been handed to me except criticism and impossible standards. Mom, that's not true, and you know it, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I have worked incredibly hard for everything I have, and I'm just trying to help. We don't need your help, she snapped. And we certainly don't need your judgment. It's not judgment. It's concern, I insisted. Dad just said you are underwater financially. The property taxes are due. Your credit cards are maxed out. These are serious problems. Problems that are none of your business, she shrieked. This is between your father and me. Dad sat silently, staring into his coffee cup. His new Rolex gleamed on his wrist, an ironic symbol of prosperity we all knew was an illusion. Dad, I said softly. Please say something. He looked up, his eyes tired. Your mother is upset, Heidi. Maybe we should discuss this another time. That was when something broke inside me. After 3 years of paying their mortgage, after decades of walking on eggshells, after endless criticism and emotional manipulation, I was done being the family punching bag. There won't be another time, I said, my voice shaking. This pattern never changes. Mom attacks, Dad enables, and I'm supposed to take it because we're family. Well, I'm done. Mom stood up so quickly her chair tipped backward. How dare you speak to us like that in our own home after everything we have done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? I shot back. Made me feel inadequate at every turn? Criticized my appearance, my career, my life choices? Taken financial support without acknowledgement or gratitude? Her face contorted with rage. Financial support? What are you talking about? The occasional dinner out? The birthday gifts? Do you want a medal for doing the bare minimum a daughter should do? The bare minimum is exactly what I have gotten from you emotionally my entire life, I said, and immediately regretted the honesty. It was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Mom exploded. You ungrateful, selfish girl. After everything I sacrificed for you, I gave up my career to raise you. I devoted my life to this family. And this is the thanks I get? Judgment and disrespect in my own kitchen. She began listing every perceived failure of mine since childhood, every time I had disappointed her, every flaw in my character as she saw it. But something had changed in me. For the first time, I heard her words not as truth, but as the desperate, lashing out of someone who couldn't face her own unhappiness. It still hurt, but differently, like an old wound being prodded rather than a fresh cut. I'm not doing this anymore, I said quietly, standing up. I'm going to pack my bag and go home. Running away as usual? She sneered. Can't handle the truth? The truth is that you are angry and bitter, and you are taking it out on me because I am a safe target, I said. The truth is that I have been paying your mortgage for 3 years without telling you, because I knew you would react exactly like this, making it about your pride instead of practical solutions. The room went silent. Dad's face drained of color. Mom's mouth opened and closed without sound, for once speechless. Then she found her voice, and it was ice cold. Get out. Mom. Dad started, but she cut him off. Get out of my house, she repeated. Get out and never come back. If you think we are such burdens, such failures, then you are free of us. Go live your perfect little life and leave us alone. I looked at Dad, searching for any sign that he would stand up for me, for us, for the possibility of healing this broken family dynamic. He looked away. Okay, I said simply. I walked upstairs, packed my overnight bag with mechanical movements, and came back down. Mom had moved to the living room window, her back to the entryway. Dad stood helplessly in the hallway. Heidi, she doesn't mean it, he whispered. Give her time to calm down. She means it, I said. And for once, I am going to take her at her word. I walked out the front door, closing it quietly behind me. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror at the house where I had grown up, never suspecting it would be the last time I saw it as someone welcomed there. The 40-minute drive to my apartment passed in a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove, numb and hollow. When I arrived home, I sat in my parked car for nearly an hour, unable to summon the energy to go inside. Finally, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. How's the birthday weekend going? Surviving? I called her immediately. To my surprise, my voice was steady as I recounted what had happened. It was only when I reached the part about my mother's final words that my composure cracked. She told me to get out and never come back, I sobbed. And then the tears came, hot and relentless. Sophia, I just left. Where are you now? She asked, concern evident. In my car outside my building. I'm coming over. Don't move. 20 minutes later, Sophia arrived with a bottle of wine and a bag from the deli. She took one look at me, still sitting in my car, and slid in beside me. First hug, then food, then wine. Then we figure this out, she said, pulling me into her arms. I spent that night on Sophia's sofa, unable to be alone with my thoughts. She even called in sick to her job on Monday to stay with me. By Tuesday, I had to return to work, though I was barely functional. I went through the motions with clients, my professional mask firmly in place, but inside, I was unraveling. Dad called several times that first week. I let each call go to voicemail. His messages were vague. Please call me back, Heidi. We need to talk. No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened, just a request for me to once again be the bigger person, to smooth things over. There were no calls from Mom. After 10 days of emotional limbo, I made an appointment with a financial advisor colleague to discuss my own situation. I had been paying $2,200 monthly toward their mortgage for 3 years, totaling nearly $80,000. Money I could have put toward my own home, my retirement. Legally, you have no obligation to continue these payments, my colleague Diane advised. The mortgage is in their names. You are not a cosigner. You have been making a gift, essentially. What will happen if I stop? I asked. They will receive notices of non-payment. Eventually, if they cannot make the payments themselves, foreclosure proceedings could begin. But Heidi, that is not your responsibility. I decided to stop the automatic payments immediately. It was both terrifying and liberating, like cutting a cord that had both connected and constrained me. The next step was finding my own permanent home. With the mortgage payments off my monthly budget, I could now afford to look at condos and small houses in neighborhoods I had previously considered out of reach. 2 weeks after the blow-up, I put a deposit on a sunlit 2-bedroom condo in a converted Victorian house. It had bay windows, hardwood floors, and most importantly, it was mine. No one could tell me to get out. No one could make me feel unwelcome in my own space. During this time, I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in family trauma. "What you are describing sounds like a lifetime of emotional abuse," she said after I recounted my childhood and recent events. "Your mother exhibits classic narcissistic behaviors, and your father is what we call an enabler. But she's not always terrible," I protested weakly. "Sometimes she can be loving, especially when I'm doing exactly what she wants." "That is part of the cycle of abuse," Dr. Martinez explained. "The periods of apparent normalcy or even affection keep you hoping things will change. They keep you coming back. But has the fundamental dynamic ever really changed?" I had to admit it had not. The good periods were just lulls between storms, never representing real growth or healing. Through therapy, I began to recognize patterns I had never seen before. How my mother would create crises to pull me back when I was establishing independence, how she would undermine my confidence, how she would pit family members against each other to maintain control. "What about the mortgage payments?" I asked Dr. Martinez. "Was I enabling them by paying without telling them?" "Your intention was to help, but keeping it secret did prevent them from facing reality," she considered thoughtfully. "It allowed your father to avoid taking necessary action and your mother to maintain denial about their situation. So, I was wrong to help." The thought was painful. "Not wrong. You acted out of love and concern, but sometimes helping can hurt in the long run. True help would have been working with them to develop financial independence, not creating financial dependence." The hardest part of those weeks was learning to sit with guilt without acting on it. When I would think about my parents possibly losing their home, my instinct was to rescue them, to sacrifice my own well-being to preserve theirs. Dr. Martinez helped me see this as a conditioned response, not a moral obligation. "Your parents are adults who made their own choices," she reminded me. "Your father chose not to find adequate employment after his job loss. Your mother chose not to work or adjust their lifestyle. These were choices, not circumstances thrust upon them." Gradually, the panic attacks subsided. I slept through the night more often. I stopped checking my phone constantly for messages from Dad. I began to embrace the possibility that life could be different, that I could love my family without being consumed by them. I threw myself into making my new condo a home. I painted the walls colors Mom would have hated, a deep teal in the living room, a sunny yellow in the kitchen. I bought furniture that suited my taste rather than what would impress others. I created a home office where I could work on personal financial projects, including a revised retirement plan now that I had an extra $2,200 monthly to invest. Through it all, there was a lingering sadness. Despite everything, I loved my parents. I missed the father who had taught me to ride a bike, who had slipped me extra allowance for books, who had been proud of me before Mom convinced him not to be. I even missed the mother who, in rare moments of connection, would share stories of her own childhood dreams or laugh genuinely at a shared joke. But I could not miss them enough to destroy myself in the process of loving them. That was the boundary I was finally learning to set. Exactly 3 weeks and 2 days after I walked out of my parents' house, my phone rang with Dad's number. I had been expecting this call, yet was still unprepared for the rush of emotion that hit me. I was alone in my office, so I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Dad." "Heidi," he sounded relieved that I had picked up. "How are you, sweetheart?" The casual normalcy of his greeting, as if nothing had happened, was jarring. "I'm okay," I said cautiously. "How are you?" "Oh, you know, getting by." There was an awkward pause. "We've missed you at Sunday dinners." I said nothing, waiting. If he wanted to pretend everything was normal, he would have to do it without my help. Your mother has been asking about you, he continued, which I knew was a lie. If Mom had been asking, it was not out of concern. Has she? I kept my voice neutral. He cleared his throat. Well, you know how she is. She has her pride, but I know she regrets what happened. Did she say that? I asked. Another pause. Not in those exact words, no, but I know she does. My heart sank. Nothing had changed. He was still making excuses for her, still expecting me to accept the unacceptable. Dad, why are you calling? I asked directly. Can a father not call his daughter just to check in? He attempted a light tone that fell flat. After 3 weeks of silence following Mom throwing me out of the house? No, that was not just checking in. He sighed, and I pictured him running his hand through his thinning hair, a nervous habit he'd had forever. Heidi, your mother was upset. She said things she didn't mean. You know how she gets when she feels backed into a corner. I do know, I agreed. I have known my entire life. That does not make it okay. No one is saying it's okay, he backpedaled. But family is family. We have to forgive each other. Forgiveness requires acknowledgement and change, Dad. Has Mom acknowledged what she did? Has anything changed? The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. I thought so, I said softly. She's your mother, Heidi. She loves you in her way. Her way is hurting me. It always has. Another long pause. I could hear him breathing, gathering his courage for what I now realized was the real purpose of his call. There's something else, he finally said. Did you know the bank sent us a notice about the mortgage? My heart began to race, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of notice? A late payment notice, then another. They're threatening to begin foreclosure proceedings if we don't catch up. I don't understand it. The payments have always gone through automatically. Have they? I asked. Yes, for the past 3 years. Ever since, he trailed off, and I could hear the moment realization began to dawn. Heidi, what did you mean when you said you had been paying our mortgage? The moment of truth had arrived. Part of me wanted to deflect, to protect him from the reality of how much I had sacrificed while they had taken me for granted. But I was done with secrets and enabling. I meant exactly what I said, Dad. I have been making your mortgage payments, $2,200 every month, for the past 3 years. That is why they were always on time, regardless of your financial situation. The silence that followed was deafening. That's not possible, he finally said, his voice faint. We would have known. How? You never looked at the payment details, did you? The bank statement just showed the payment was received. You assumed it was coming from your accounts. But why would you? How could you afford? He stammered. I make good money, Dad. The money you and Mom dismiss as my fancy job. I lived in a smaller apartment than I could afford. Drove an older car. Limited my expenses so I could help you keep your home. Because I loved you and could not bear to see you lose everything. Why did you not tell us? There was pain in his voice now and confusion. Because I knew Mom would react exactly as she did when I tried to help openly. She would see it as an attack on her pride, on your capabilities, instead of what it was, a daughter loving her parents. 3 years, he repeated, the enormity of it sinking in. That is over $70,000. $79, $200 to be exact, I confirmed. Heidi, I had no idea. I told your mother I had found freelance consulting work that was covering our expenses. I was too ashamed to admit I was stocking shelves at 60 years old. The admission broke my heart. My proud, accomplished father had been reduced to creating fictions to preserve his dignity. There is no shame in honest work, Dad. The shame is in not facing reality. Does this mean? Have you stopped the payments? He asked, his voice small. Yes, I said simply. When Mom told me to get out and never come back, I took her at her word. All of it. But the house, he began, is not my responsibility, I finished firmly. It never was. You and Mom need to make some hard decisions now. Sell the house you cannot afford. Get jobs that cover your actual expenses. Create a sustainable retirement plan. All things I offered to help with before Mom threw me out. She will never agree to sell, he said, panic edging into his voice. Then she needs to get a job, or you need to find better paying work, or both. But Dad, I cannot keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm. I understand, he said, though I was not sure he did. What you did for us. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. But I do need you to understand that things have to change. I am not coming back to the old dynamic. I am not going to be the family scapegoat anymore. Of course not, he agreed quickly. I will talk to your mother. I will make her understand. I almost laughed at the idea that he could make my mother understand anything she did not want to acknowledge. Good luck with that. Could we meet to talk about all this in person? He asked hopefully. I considered refusing. The thought of facing either of them again so soon made my stomach clench. But I also knew that written boundaries were clearer than unspoken ones. Not at the house, I said firmly. I will meet you at Riverside Cafe on Thursday at noon. Just you, not Mom. I am not ready to see her yet. He agreed quickly, thanking me repeatedly before we hung up. After the call ended, I sat at my desk, shaking. I had finally told the truth, and the world had not ended. In fact, for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. I arrived at Riverside Cafe 20 minutes early on Thursday, choosing a table in the back corner where I could see the door. I had prepared for this meeting with the same thoroughness I would use for an important client presentation. Dr. Martinez and I had role-played potential scenarios. I had written down my boundaries and practiced stating them clearly and calmly. Remember, you are not responsible for their emotions or reactions, she had advised. You are only responsible for communicating your own needs and limits with clarity. Dad arrived exactly on time, looking like he had aged years in the few weeks since I had seen him. His shoulders were hunched, his face gaunt. The Rolex I had given him was conspicuously absent from his wrist, and I wondered if he had pawned it already. Heidi, he said with visible relief, as if he had half expected me not to show up. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me. We ordered coffee, and an uncomfortable silence fell between us until the server left. How have you been? He asked tentatively. I have been reflecting a lot, I said, sidestepping the politeness, on our family dynamics, on my role in them. On what I want moving forward. He nodded, looking down at his coffee. I have been doing some thinking too. Tell me, I encouraged. He took a deep breath. I want to start by saying I am sorry. Not just for what happened that day, but for years of not protecting you from your mother's anger, for allowing you to become her target, for taking your support without acknowledgement. It was more self-awareness than I had expected, and it momentarily threw me off balance. Thank you for saying that, I managed. After we spoke on the phone, I went through our bank records, he continued. I saw the truth. For 3 years, you have been carrying us while I pretended everything was fine. He looked up, his eyes wet. I feel ashamed, Heidi. Deeply ashamed. I did not tell you about the payments to make you feel ashamed, I said. I did it because I love you and wanted to help. I know, he said. That makes it worse somehow. He wiped at his eyes with a napkin. A father should provide for his children, not the other way around. At least not when the parents are still able-bodied and capable. It's not about gender roles or traditional expectations, Dad. It is about honesty and reciprocity. I would have gladly helped you if you had been honest about your situation. And if that help had been met with gratitude instead of hostility. He nodded, accepting this. Your mother and I have had some difficult conversations since your call. I can imagine, I said dryly. She did not believe me at first about the mortgage payments. She accused me of making it up to manipulate her. He sighed. I had to show her the bank statements, the dates of the payments, the account number they came from. And she cried, he said simply. I have not seen your mother cry in years, not since her father died. I was not sure how to feel about this. Part of me, the wounded child inside, felt vindicated. Another part felt sad that it had come to this. Did she say anything about how she treated me? I asked. He hesitated. She is struggling with that part. She feels humiliated, which makes it hard for her to acknowledge her behavior. Her humiliation does not erase my hurt, I said firmly. No, it does not, he agreed. Which is why I asked her to come here today. To apologize to you herself. My heart jumped. You what? I told you I was not ready to see her. I know, and I am sorry, but I thought if you could just hear her out. The cafe door opened then, and my mother walked in. She spotted us immediately and headed toward our table. I felt like I could not breathe, trapped between my boundary and the approaching confrontation. "You ambushed me," I said to my father, my voice low and angry. "I am sorry," he repeated helplessly. "I thought it would be better this way." My mother reached our table, standing awkwardly beside it. She looked different, smaller somehow. Her normally perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. Like my father, she seemed to have aged rapidly. "Hello, Heidi," she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. I did not invite her to sit. "Dad told me you were coming despite my explicit request to meet with him alone." She flinched at my tone. "Yes. I needed to see you." "Why?" She glanced at my father, who nodded encouragingly. "May I sit down?" I considered refusing, but causing a scene in the cafe would only make this more difficult. "Fine." She took the third chair at our table, perching on the edge as if ready to flee. We sat in tense silence until the server returned to take her order. She asked for water only, her voice barely audible. After the server left, she took a deep breath. "Your father showed me the bank records about the mortgage payments." I said nothing, waiting. "I did not know," she continued. "All this time, I thought we were managing. I thought Richard's freelance work was covering our expenses." "I had no idea you were," she trailed off, unable to finish. "Paying your mortgage. Supporting you." Being the adult in the relationship, I supplied coldly. She flinched again. "Yes. Would it have mattered if you had known? Would you have treated me any better?" Her eyes widened at my directness. "I don't know. I would like to think so. At least it was honest." "Well, now you know. And now it has stopped." "Yes," she said quietly. "The bank has given us 30 days to catch up on the payments, or they will begin foreclosure." "That is not my problem anymore," I said, the words feeling both cruel and necessary. "No, it is not," she agreed, surprising me. "We are looking at options. Richard has applied for better-paying jobs." I have an interview tomorrow at a real estate office as a receptionist." This was unexpected. My mother had not worked since before I was born. Her identity was wrapped up in being a homemaker and maintaining the perfect house. "That is a start," I acknowledged, "but it will not be enough to keep the house." "I know," she said, and there was defeat in her voice. "We have contacted a realtor. She is coming next week to assess the property." I looked at my father, who nodded confirmation. "It is the only sensible option," he said. "We should have done it 3 years ago when I lost my job." "Yes, you should have," I agreed. My mother twisted her hands in her lap. "Heidi, I know an apology is not enough. What I said to you that day and many days before it, there is no excuse." "No, there is not," I said, still not ready to make this easy for her. "I was cruel to you. I have been cruel to you for years." Her voice broke. "I told myself it was for your own good, that I was pushing you to be your best. But the truth is, I was jealous." This admission stunned me into silence. "I gave up my career to raise you children. It was what women of my generation were expected to do. I do not regret having you, but I regret losing myself in the process. And when you became so successful, so independent, doing exactly what I had given up," she shook her head. "It was easier to criticize you than to face my own regrets." It was the most self-aware thing I had ever heard my mother say. Part of me wanted to embrace this moment of vulnerability, to rush toward reconciliation. But the wiser part, the part that had been working with Dr. Martinez, knew that one moment of clarity did not undo decades of damage. "I appreciate your honesty," I said carefully. "But I need you to understand that our relationship cannot go back to what it was. I will not be your emotional punching bag anymore. I will not sacrifice my financial security for your comfort. I will not accept criticism disguised as concern." "I understand," she said quietly. "Do you? Because these are non-negotiable boundaries for me now. If you cannot respect them, then we will not have a relationship at all." My father reached across the table toward my hand, but stopped short of touching me. "We want to do better, Heidi. Both of us. We want to rebuild what we have broken, if you will give us that chance." I looked between them, these flawed human parents of mine. "I cannot make any promises right now. I am still processing everything that happened, not just that day, but throughout my life. I need time and space." "Of course," my father said quickly. "Whatever you need." And I want you both to consider therapy, I added. Individually and as a couple. There are issues here that go beyond money. My mother's mouth tightened reflexively, but she nodded. If that is what it takes. It's a start, I said. As for the house situation, I cannot and will not resume payments, but I can help you create a financial plan for downsizing. I can connect you with resources for job searching. I can advise you on retirement options. That is what I can offer. That is more than we deserve, my father said softly. It is not about deserving, I replied. It is about what I am willing and able to give while maintaining my own well-being. We talked for another hour, more practically now, about house values, about Dad's resume and interview skills, about what size home they could realistically afford. It was the most adult conversation we had ever had, with no emotional manipulation, no tears, no guilt trips. As we prepared to leave, Mom hesitated, then asked, "Would it be all right if I called you?" "Just to check in occasionally." "Text first," I said. "Ask if I have time to talk. Respect if I say not right now." She nodded, accepting this boundary. "I will." We parted without hugs or promises, just a tentative acknowledgement that something new might be possible, even if the old was irrevocably gone. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Not healed, not whole, but moving in the right direction. For the first time in my life, I had stood firm in my truth and my worth, and the world had not ended. In fact, it felt like it might finally be beginning. 6 months can change everything or nothing at all. In my case, it changed almost everything. My new condo truly became mine. I painted an accent wall a bright teal I had always wanted. I planted herbs on my small balcony. I adopted a dignified orange tabby named Leo, who greeted me at the door each evening and slept curled against my side each night. My career continued to flourish with the mental energy no longer consumed by family drama. I was promoted to senior advisor with my own team, a position that came with a substantial raise and increased flexibility. Dr. Martinez and I continued our weekly sessions, gradually reducing to bi-weekly. The panic attacks stopped entirely. The nightmares about my mother's criticism faded. The constant background hum of anxiety quieted. "You have done remarkable work, Heidi," Dr. Martinez told me. "Many people spend years, even decades, trying to break free from toxic family patterns. You have made tremendous progress in a relatively short time." "It doesn't feel short," I admitted. "It feels like the longest 6 months of my life." "Growth is painful," she agreed. "But you have not just survived this period, you have transformed through it." My relationship with my parents evolved slowly, with careful steps forward and occasional steps back. Dad found a position as a sales manager at a smaller company, making about 60% of his previous salary, but with less stress and more appreciation. He seemed genuinely happier despite the financial adjustment. More surprisingly, Mom not only took the receptionist job but excelled at it. Within 3 months, she had organized the office so efficiently that they offered to pay for her to get her real estate license. At 63, she was embarking on the career she had abandoned for marriage and motherhood 40 years earlier. The younger agents asked me for advice, she told me during one of our now regular Sunday phone calls. "They say clients trust me because I have life experience." The pride in her voice was something new, something earned rather than manufactured. It suited her. They sold the Colonial in the suburbs, making enough profit to pay off their credit card debt and put a down payment on a 2-bedroom townhouse closer to the city. It was a third of the size of their previous home, but required far less maintenance and was within their new budget. "I don't miss the big house as much as I thought I would," Dad confessed when we met for lunch one day. "All those rooms we never used, all that stuff we never needed. It feels good to simplify." The most significant change, though, was that my mother began seeing a therapist of her own. It was not at my insistence. She made the decision after breaking down at work one day when a client resembling me came in with her young daughter. "I suddenly saw us, you and me, as we were when you were little," she explained, "before I became so critical, when you still looked at me with complete trust. And I realized how much I had destroyed." Her therapist diagnosed her with narcissistic tendencies rooted in her own childhood trauma, a pattern she had unwittingly perpetuated. The work was difficult and often painful for her. There were sessions after which she would call me, voice raw from crying, to apologize for specific incidents from my childhood that she had finally recognized as harmful. I accepted these apologies cautiously, neither rushing to forgive nor holding on to resentment. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that forgiveness was a process, not a single act, and that it was primarily for my own peace rather than my mother's absolution. Our new relationship was built on clearer communication and firmer boundaries. I visited them in their new home once a month, no more. We spoke on the phone weekly, but I felt free to end calls that became negative or draining. I no longer automatically said yes to every request. No longer felt responsible for their happiness or security. The strange thing is, my father observed during a rare moment of insight, now that you are not carrying us, we have learned to stand on our own. It has been good for us. As painful as the process was, the hardest lesson for all of us was learning the difference between helping and enabling. I still offered professional financial advice, but I no longer paid their bills. I celebrated their successes, but did not rescue them from the consequences of their choices. I loved them without sacrificing myself in the process. As summer turned to fall and fall to winter, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in less than a year. The previous Christmas had been tense and performative, with expensive gifts exchanged in the grand house, everyone pretending we were the perfect family. This Christmas would be simpler, in their modest townhouse, with homemade gifts and honest conversation. What I have learned, I told Sophia over dinner at my place, is that standing up for myself did not destroy my family. It transformed it into something more authentic. You gave them the opportunity to grow by refusing to stay small, she observed wisely. Exactly. And I gave myself permission to live my own life, not the one my mother had scripted for me. That script had always ended with me married to a successful man, living in a house like theirs, having children who would repeat the cycle. Instead, I was building a different story, one where success was measured by peace rather than possessions, where relationships were based on mutual respect rather than obligation, where love did not require the sacrifice of self. The irony was that by setting those boundaries, by refusing to continue paying the mortgage and enabling their financially unsustainable lifestyle, I had helped my parents find their own strength and independence. My mother was happier working than she had ever been as a homemaker. My father was rediscovering interests and friendships that had been overshadowed by career pressure. We were all, in our own ways, finally growing up. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not sacrificing everything, but rather allowing others the dignity of facing reality. Sometimes the strongest families are not those that never break, but those that learn how to rebuild differently after breaking. Sometimes the deepest healing comes only after the most painful truths have been spoken aloud. If you have found yourself in a similar situation, trapped in unhealthy family dynamics or carrying burdens that are not yours to bear, I hope my story offers some encouragement. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary for authentic relationships. Loving someone does not mean sacrificing your well-being for theirs. You can honor your family while still honoring yourself.